सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शांति शांति। Is it better now? Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. 1 minute. Is it better now? Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay and all these technical issues. So, in this Prashnopanishad, we are seeing the 6th question, and that is about the Purusha, Shodashakala Purusha. And Pipalada Rishi said in the 2nd mantra that here in this very body is that Supreme Purusha from where this whole creation comes about. Yasmin etaha Shodashakalaha prabhavanti. Shodashakala is the creation and Purusha is the creator. So now how did it come about? So in the 3rd mantra, he speaks about the process, third, fourth. So, Sa Ishansh Chakre, Sa Ikshansh Chakre. So he thought, what if it remains in this body? I will remain. What if it departs? I will depart. Now the answer will come in the next mantra. The answer is prana. But here the expression Sa Ikshan Chakre. So he thought. So there is a doership. There is karta bhav. And so in this commentary now, Shankaracharya ji takes on the Sankhya philosophy. So before we go into commentary, just a few aspects of Sankhya we should remember. As I said last class, the Sankhya that we find in Srimad Bhagavatam, that Devahuti's son Kapil Muni, who is avatar of Lord Vishnu, speaks about, that is nothing but Vedanta itself. Then there's another Kapil Muni, some 2,000-3,000 years before Christ, who brought about the Sankhya philosophy as a separate darshan, different from Vedanta. But those works have, today they are not available. Today what is available are 70 sutras of Ishvara Krishna. They are the Sankhya Sutras. That book is called Sankhya Tattva Manorama. And the 70 sutras, they are called Sankhya Saptati. So we find that these 70 sutras, they have also gone out of our country, and these are described as the pearl of the scholastic literature in India. So in 6th century, a person called Paramartha, a Brahmana from Ujjain, he went to China. He learned Chinese, and for the benefit of the Chinese, he translated the Sankhya Karikas into Chinese. They are known as the Golden 70 Discourses. Just think about it, from what all has gone from India abroad, especially to China. So Bodhidharma took the knowledge from here, and that's how Kung Fu and other martial arts developed there. The Sankhya Sutras also have gone there. Many things like that from Bharat have gone outside Bharat, and we have shared knowledge with people. And so these Sankhya Sutras. So what is the difference in Vedanta philosophy and Sankhya philosophy? So 5 main differences we will just understand here. That will make it easy to understand the Bhashya, what Shankaracharya has written. So first and foremost is the understanding of Purusha and Prakriti. So Purusha is the Atma Tattva, it is sentient. Prakriti is inert, it is insentient. Prakriti is also called as Pradhana in Sankhya philosophy. Now, Purusha and Prakriti, even in Vedanta, we have the Purusha is sentient and Prakriti or Maya is inert. But Sankhya says Purushas are countless. Vedanta says no, Purusha is only one. That is one of the biggest differences. Vedanta says Purusha is one, reflecting in all the equipments, is one Purusha only appearing as many. Sankhya says no, every combination of Purusha, Prakriti, Purusha is unique. Why is it unique? One of their logics given is that if it was one, if one Purusha is there, then any one getting liberated, everybody will get liberated. So they say, no, that is not possible. Equipments are different. The qualities of the equipments are different. The size, the shape, the name, the color, all that is different. And so Purushas are many. That is one difference. And so in their understanding, if one Purusha gets liberated in one equipment, These other Purushas are still waiting for liberation. Vedanta says, what? How is that possible? There is only one absolute truth. And if a jiva realizes oneness with the absolute, it's like the dream ending. The entire dream ends. Then one doesn't ask, what about the other dream characters? When one has woken up, the entire dream ends. But Sankhya says, no, one person only from the dream has got liberated. Many others are still waiting. So this is one difference. Then Vedanta says Purusha is Nitya Mukta, the bondage is only apparent. Sankhya says, no, Purusha is bound. And then Purusha will get liberated. So bondage and liberation are real. Then, that's one difference. Then the second difference. So Vedanta says, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara are all appearances of one reality. Sankhya says, Purusha and Prakriti are both separate. They both are eternal. In Vedanta, we say Purusha or this Maya and its by its effect, the whole creation, etc., are appearance of one reality only. There's only one eternal truth. In Sankhya, there are two, and hence the third difference actually is Sankhya is dualistic, Vedanta is non-dualistic. So for Sankhya, there are many Purushas on one hand, and also Purusha and Prakriti both are eternal and both are separate. So they call Pradhana, they use the word Pradhan. So Dha means to keep. So Pradhana means to keep in different ways, to place differently. So this Pradhana is Prakriti, made of three gunas. And these three gunas make up this entire universe. This whole combination of three gunas is what makes up the whole universe. Some of those things are similar, and Vedanta also speaks about that. But what is the purpose? The purpose is this Prakriti arranges this whole creation, keeps various things in this creation for the enjoyment of Purusha. So the Prakriti becomes the karta, Purusha is the bhokta. This is one big difference, and this is one thing which is refuted in this commentary here now. Prakriti is the karta, the whole creation, etc. comes about. Of course, in the presence of Purusha, Prakriti becomes the karta. Purusha is not the karta, but Purusha is the bhokta. So all these Purushas, so many different Purushas appearing in so many equipments, the creation is meant for them to enjoy. And Prakriti is working for that purpose. So it is not like in Vedanta, Prakriti, the inherent power of Purusha, and Prakriti creates by the will of Purusha, and it's only a relative creation. It's not an absolute creation. It's not real. It's only an illusory aspect. Really speaking, there is no creation. That is Vedanta standpoint. That's why it is non-dualistic. But Sankhya is dualistic. And in Sankhya, the present Sankhya that is there, what we are discussing right now, there is no place of Ishvara. And that's why Sankhya is Nirishvara. Vedanta accepts Ishvara. That is one more difference. So in Sankhya, there is no Ishvara. Then how does this work? Prakriti, the Paramanus, etc., they work in the presence of Purusha. The sentient power is there, sentiency is there, but there is no Ishvara Tattva, the totality, the creator required. Pradhana is doing everything. So Pradhan only manages the whole creation. Ishvara is not required. In the Sannidhi of Purusha, these atoms, molecules, all this, the inert matter becomes sentient. What we say that Brahman plus Maya is equal to Ishvara, and that Ishvara is the creator, sustainer, destroyer with respect to creation. And when there is no creation, that Ishvara is not Ishvara. There is Brahman alone. There is no Maya, there is no creation, there is nothing. There is absolute truth. That is Vedanta philosophy. Sankhya is dualistic. Sankhya says, no, there is Purusha and Prakriti, both are eternal. And in presence of Purusha, this insentient Prakriti will become sentient, and then the Prakriti only does everything. And this Prakriti is independently going on. Purusha also is going on. Both are eternal factors. When we say in Vedanta that no, this Purusha, the Prakriti depends on Purusha, that dependence is not there here. Also, a person who realizes Purusha, everything disappears for that person in Vedanta. Here it is not like that. This person is liberated, but there are many other jivas because Prakriti is going on, Pradhana is going on, creation is real. So only this one Purusha got some liberation. What is that liberation? That Purusha realizes, I am Purusha Tattva, I am not one with Pradhan. That is the liberation. So I am the bhokta, I am not the karta. It is not the I am the akarta, abhokta, there is no creation. It is not that state of Advaita. So this is the difference. And that's why in the Gita, in the 13th chapter, we find if we don't have the background of Sankhya, we may get confused when we see some of these shlokas. It will come there. Karya karana kartritve hetu prakriti ruchyate purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve hetu ruchyate. So karya karana kartritve, in the karya, the effect, karana, the cause, and doership, kartritve, who is responsible for this? Hetu prakriti ruchyate. Prakriti is responsible for this. Then what is Purusha responsible for? Purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve hetu ruchyate. Purusha is only the bhokta. Purusha is not the karta. Vedanta says Purusha is not karta, not bhokta from highest standpoint. And if you take a empirical standpoint, then Purusha is the creator also, sustainer also, destroyer also, enjoyer also. So karta, bhokta, everything is that Ishvara only. So these are the differences in Sankhya and in Vedanta. Yes, these 5 differences I have covered. More details one can go through if one wants to. The whole Sankhya philosophy in depth, one can go through that. Now here, let us come to the mantra and the commentary of this mantra. So in the Bhashya, Shankaracharya ji says, Sa Purushaha Shodashakalaha Prishto Yo Bharadvajena Ikshan Chakra Ikshanam Darshanam Chakre Kritavan iti Arthaha Srishti Phala Kramadi Vishayam. So Sa Purusha, that Purusha who is the creator of this Shodashakala, which Bharadwaj had asked to Pipalada Rishi, that Purusha Ikshan Chakre, so Ikshanam Darshanam Gataha. So that Purusha started thinking about what? Srishti Phala Kramadi Vishayam. That how this Srishti will come about. What is that factor which will make this Srishti possible? Which sequence this Srishti should come? What will be the result of this? The Sukha, Dukkha, all these. So he started thinking about all this. How? Katham iti uchyate kasmin kartru visheshe dehad utkranto bhavishyami aham evam kasmin va sharire pratisthite aham pratishthasyami pratisthitah syam iti arthaha. That what is that specific agent who, if it departs from this body, I will also depart, and who, if it stays in the body, I will also stay. Now this is what he thought, and this is the explanation of the mantra. Now the objection is raised. What is the objection? Nanu eva atma karta pradhanam kartru. अतः पुरुषार्थम प्रयोजनम उररीकृत्य प्रधानम प्रवर्तते महदाद्याकारेण. So sorry, I said nanu atma karta. It is atma akarta, because a and a sandhi also becomes a. So this is the Sankhyan view, that atma is akarta. Atma here means Purusha. So Atma is a karta, then who is a karta? Pradhanam kartru. Pradhana is a karta. Ata purushartham prayojanam urarikritya. And this pradhana is a karta for what? For Purusha. So for Purusha to enjoy, pradhana is bringing forth the creation. Is it not one of the arguments which a lot of people give today when we speak about self-control? This is the argument that they give. Why should we live in self-control? God has created this world for us to enjoy, and we are denying that to ourselves, and we are insulting God by doing this. The whole creation is created for us to enjoy. They may use the word God, here they use the word Pradhan. So Pradhan is the creator. Here the mantra says, no, the Atma is thinking. Atma is the karta, and Atma brings forth this creation. Purusha brings forth this creation. So the Sankhyan person says, no. Atma is the akarta, Pradhana is the karta, and this Pradhana brings about this entire creation for the sake of this Purusha. Pradhanam pravartate, and this Pradhana only brings about this Mahat Tattva, then Ahankara, and then the Buddhi, and then the 5 Tanmatras, and this whole creation. So these 24 tattvas are there in Sankhya. The creation is made up of 24 tattvas. And these 24 tattvas are what we even take up if in Vedanta also we see that. In Tattvabodh, etc., it is taken up. Chaturvimshati Tattvotpatti Prakaram Vakshyamaha. That's the way that creation section starts in Tattvabodh. That Chaturvimshati, there's 24 tattvas, are from Pradhan, are from Sankhya, the 24 aspects. 5 elements, 5 senses of knowledge, 5 senses of action, 5 pranas, and then Mahat Tattva, Ahankar, Buddhi, Avyakta. All these, they will become, so these are 24. And the 25th one is the Purusha, who by its presence enlivens these. But that Purusha is the bhokta. So this entire evolution of Mahat, etc., comes from Pradhan. And so he says Pradhan is the karta. Tatra idam anupapannam purushasya swatantrena iksham purvakam kartritva vachanam. And hence the objection is that the independent thinking of this Purusha about the creation and the sequence is not acceptable, because Purusha is akarta, Purusha is only the bhokta. Satvadi guna samye pradhane pramana upapanne srishtikartari sati ishwarechanu vartishu va paramanushu satsu atmano api ekatvena kartritve sadhana abhavad atmana atmani anartha kartritva anupapattescha. So here he says that this sattva guna, sattvadi guna, the three gunas, the pradhana is made up of three gunas. And when these three gunas are in samya avastha, there is no creation. When these three gunas are disturbed, then this creation will start. So this Vedanta says that this disturbance happened because of Sankalpa of Ishvara. Earlier also in Prashnopanishad it has come. But Sankhya says, no, it does not happen like that. For the sake of Purusha, this Prakriti only will create this whole creation. And there is no, this Atma is not having any desire. Atma doesn't disturb the balance of this three gunas. It is the Prakriti which is doing that. I'm just coming to, yes. So because the Pradhana is in that state of Samya and then that gets disturbed and then the creation happens, so the Bhashya here says that therefore in the face of the facts that Pradhana existing in a state of balance of its three constituents of Sattva etc. has to be assumed on valid authority to be the creator. So Pradhana is the creator, not this Atma, one aspect. Then that there exist the minutest atoms which act according to the divine will, that the self has not the wherewithal to create, it being non-dual. So even in Sankhya, Purusha is enlivening factor. And so the self cannot be an author of evil to itself because a conscious being that acts intelligently cannot do any evil to itself. So by becoming the karta, the self becomes evil and no being will do harm to itself. So self does not become the karta is the point. So it is unjustifiable to talk of any agentship of the Purusha preceded by independent deliberation. Nahi chetana van buddhi purvaka karyatmano anartham kuryat. Tasmat purusharthena prayojanena iksha purvakam iva niyata kramena pravartamane achetane pradhane chetanavad upacharoyam sa iksham chakre ityadihi yatha rajnyah sarvarthakarini bhritye rajeti tadvat. So he says here that this expression sa iksham chakre is only a figurative expression connecting to Purusha. It is not real. It is not to be taken literally. So to serve the purpose of Purusha, this insentient pradhan evolves in a particular sequence. The creation comes forth as though out of deliberation. The pradhan is figuratively spoken of as intelligent in the statement he deliberated. So who deliberated is not Purusha, because the word is saha. Now if one doesn't take that continuity of that earlier mantra, then one can always deliberate like this. Sa isham chakre, who deliberated? As per the mantra, Purusha only deliberated. Shodashakala Purusha deliberated. Sankhya says, no. Sa is a pronoun. So sa means pradhana in this context. So pradhana actually deliberated. Purusha didn't deliberate. So as though out of deliberation, the pradhan is figuratively spoken of as intelligent in the statement he deliberated, etc. And to support this, one example is given. And what is that example? That a servant of the king or an officer, let us say, that officer who executes everything, though he may not have the position of the king, but people think of him only as the king. If the king is not doing anything and mainly the officer is doing everything. So here that's what he says. Yatha rajnya sarvartha kalini bhritye raja iti tadvat. So he is the king with regard to an officer who does everything for the king. People consider him only as the king. Like even in the Mahabharata, the Dhritarashtra is supposed to be the king. But actually, who is the king there? It is Duryodhan only. Everything Duryodhan only is taking decisions and he is only doing that. And Dhritarashtra is like a helpless puppet in his hands. So it's like that. Just one minute. So now this refutation, now this objection has been created. Sankhya's view is brought up. Now Shankaracharya answers. What does he say? Na atmano bhoktritva vat kartritva upapattehe yatha sankhyasya chinmatrasya aparinamino api atmano bhoktritvam tadvat vedavadinam ikshadi purvakam jagat kartritvam upapannam shruti pramanyat. So Shankaracharya says, no, you cannot say that Atma is the bhokta and not the karta, or Purusha is the bhokta and not the karta. Because, first of all, Purusha in its absolute sense is neither karta nor bhokta. That is Vedanta. But with reference to creation, then we attribute both to Purusha. We can't attribute only one. So he says, no, since it is as logical to look upon the self as the doer, as to conceive of it as the enjoyer. So either Purusha is the karta, bhokta, the enlivening factor, and because of whom the everything happens, and who only becomes this embodied jiva also, and who goes through everything, and who only becomes Ishvara, and Ishvara is the Srishti karta, and he is only the bhokta. So either you say that it is both karta and bhokta, or you say it is neither. You can't take this in-between position of selective only karta, only bhokta and not the karta. So just as from Sankhya's standpoint, the self, which is a mere changeless consciousness, can still be the enjoyer. Similarly, from the standpoint of the followers of the Vedas, its creatorship of the world through deliberation can be justified on the authority of the Vedas. So the Vedas are very clear. If you say Purusha can become the bhokta, though it is changeless, then Vedanta says very clearly that yes, okay, even though it is changeless, it can appear as both karta and bhokta. So if you say that no, Purusha is not the karta, Pradhana is the karta, Purusha is only the bhokta, that is not acceptable. So now again, the Oh, mic was off. Where did I stop? I had stopped at what? The refutation of Shankaracharya, the answer. From where did I, till where did you see? Till where did you hear? Anyway, I'll go back to the refutation. That's fine. So, this objection that is created by the Sankhyavadi, karta and bhokta have to be the same, yes. So this karta and bhokta, they have to be the same from standpoint of Vedanta. Either you say that Atma is akarta or bhokta, and there is no creation, there is no srishti. Or you say that Atma only has become the Ishvara and the creator, and then the karta also, and then the bhokta also. So that is what Shankaracharya says. Now, here the next objection is created. Tattvantara parinama atmano anityatva ashuddhatva anekatva nimitto na chinmatra swarupa vikriyaha. अतः पुरुषस्य स्वात्मनि एव भोक्तृत्वे चिन्मात्र स्वरूप विक्रिया न दोषाय भवतां पुनर्वेदवादिनां सृष्टिकर्तृत्वे तत्वांतर परिणाम एव इति आत्मनो अनित्यत्वादि सर्वदोष प्रसंग इति चेत. So now what is the next objection? He says here that if you say that the Atma or the Purusha becomes the karta, that is a change in the essence or the nature of that self. That is called tattvantara parinam. So he says any transformation consisting in a change of the essence of the self into a different category, meaning from akarta, you have made it karta. What will it result in? It causes impermanence, anityatva, impurity, ashuddhatva, and anekatva, multiplicity. So now suddenly this Atma, which is not the karta, if you make it into karta, it will become impermanent, it will become impure, it will become many. So the oneness of this Atma will go. But if you only create a variation in its very nature of consciousness, does not do so. What does that mean? If enjoyership is inherent in the Purusha himself, any change within that consciousness is not open to any charge of mutation of the self. So this is the assumption of Sankhya, that enjoyership is inherent in the Purusha because Pradhana is doing everything for Purusha. And Purusha has to enjoy. So enjoyership is inherent nature of the self. This is another difference in Sankhya and Vedanta. Vedanta says, no, both enjoyership and doership are superimposed on the self. They are not real. They are only superimposed with reference to creation. So with creation reference, then we say it is a karta and bhokta. But otherwise, it is not by itself karta or bhokta. Sankhya says, no. By itself, Purusha is enjoyer. Prakriti is a karta. And Purusha, Prakriti is doing all this for enjoyment of Purusha. So if you say now that Purusha becomes the karta, you are bringing about a massive, major change in the essence or the nature of that Purusha itself. That will make the Purusha impermanent, impure, and it will become many. And so that is not acceptable. Whereas from your standpoint, who are followers of Vedas and admit that self is the creator, there does occur an essential mutation. What is that essential mutation? That this Purusha actually becomes the karta. So by becoming the intellect, etc., for the purposes of creation. But in Sankhya, they say, no, that Purusha remains as it is. Any change will happen only in the Pradhan. So that Mahat Tattva and all that are evolutes of Pradhan. In Vedanta, we say, no, it is the appearance of Maya enlivened by Purusha. And Purusha only is the creator. Identified with the total causal body, that Purusha, that Brahman only has become Ishvara. So he says, for you, you admit this, that self is the creator. And there's an essential mutation that happens. And therefore the self becomes the subject to all such faults as impermanence, etc. Now, what is the refutation? So Shankaracharya ji says, Na ekasya api atmano avidyayam vishayanam arupo api arupo api anupadhikrita vishesha abhyupagamad avidyakrita nama rupa upadhikrito hi vishesho abhyupagamyata atmano bandha mokshadi shastrakrita samvyavaharaya paramartha to anupadhikritam cha tatvam eva advitiyam upadeyam sarvatarkika buddhi anavagrahyam abhayam shivam ishyate na tatra kartritvam bhoktritvam va kriya karaka phalam cha syat advaitatvat sarva bhavanam. Very clearly he refutes this, and he says, no, for us that self is one, still in the state of ignorance. It is only because of avidya. In the state of ignorance, there occur to it apparent distinctions, not real distinctions of. So apparent distinctions created by the presence or absence of the upadhi, the limiting adjuncts, the total mind, the total causal body, all that, constituted by the names and forms, and that each upadhi also can limit it. That limitation is only apparent. So based on that limitation which is apparent, the identification also is only apparent. It is not real. Some sort of a distinction in the self created through the limiting adjuncts of name and form that are caused by ignorance is admitted as a concession, not as reality. So that talk about the bondage and freedom from self in the scriptures may be possible, because there is bondage we are experiencing. And when bondage is there, then that is how the Shastra will tell us also that this is why you are in bondage, this is how you can come out of bondage, because you are the akarta bhokta. Unfortunately, identifying with the upadhi, now you have assumed yourself to be jiva, and because jiva is there, then the totality Ishvara is also there, and then the Ishvara is the karta. So this is not an essential mutation of the self. This is only an apparent projection. It's not real. The Ishvaratva or the creator's doership, the kartritva of the Ishvara is not real. It's not an actual mutation as per Vedanta. That's not that Brahman has actually become Ishvara and then became the creator, and now he has created the world. That is if I think world is real. And that's why we keep asking that question of why did God create the world? Why did God create the world has so many assumptions behind it. First of all, that creation is real. Now, if it is real, then there is a purpose to that creation. Now, I want to know that purpose. Now, who is that creator? Is that God? Now, why did he create that? And why did he put me here? All this is based on the reality we have given to the creation, and then superimpose the agency of creation to that God. Because creation is real, then creator has to be real. But Vedanta says that is only an apparent reality. It is not absolutely real. So we are not creating any essential mutation in the nature of the self. Actually, Sankhyans have created essential mutation by saying Purusha is bhokta. How can Purusha be bhokta and not the karta? Look at that distinction. So he says, this is by ignorance is admitted as a concession. So the talk of bondage and freedom from self in the scriptures may be possible. In reality, however, what is desired is that one should stand by the unconditioned entity, which is one without a second, which is beyond the reach of all sophists, meaning all the Tarkikas and the Sankhyans and all of them, and which is fearless and auspicious, which is Abhayam, Shivam, all that the Bhashya said, which is absolute, which is consciousness, in which there is no duality, which is absolute fearlessness. So there can be no agentship, no enjoyership, nor any action, nor instrument, nor result, where everything is reduced to non-duality. That is Advaita standpoint. The Sankhyans, however, they imagine that agentship as well as the action and the instrument and the result is superimposed on the self. But they are not in line with the Vedic knowledge or the Vedic vision. They are outside the pale of the Vedas. And so they recoil from this position. For them, creation is very real. But Advaita says it is not real, and that is what is a proper school of thought in Vedas. Sankhya, that's why he says, is outside the pale of the Vedas. As this philosophy, Ishvara Krishna's philosophy also, it is not as per what the Veda says. It is not Veda Sammat. So that's what he goes on to explain. Tatha itare tarkikaha sankhyahi iti evam paraspara. One minute. Sorry, the next para here. I started the para, skipping one para, so come back to the previous para. Sankhya tu avidya adhyaropitam eva purushe kartritvam kriyakarakam phalam chaiti kalpayitva agama bahyatvat punaha tataha trasyantaha paramarthata eva bhoktritvam purushasya icchanti tatvantaram cha pradhanam purushat paramartha vastu bhutameva kalpayanto anyatarkika krita buddhi vishayaha santo vihanyante. So he says here that the Sankhyas, they first imagine that agentship as well as the action, the instrument, the result is superimposed on the self. But as they are outside the pale of the Vedas, they recoil from such a monistic position and hold that enjoyership is a real characteristic of the self. So the Sankhyas have actually created the mutation, not Vedanta. Again, tatha itare tarkikaha sankhyahi iti evam paraspara viruddhartha kalpanat amisharthina iva pranino anyonya viruddhamana artha darshitvat duram eva apakrishyante. So here he says that again, fancying that Pradhana is a real substance, essentially different from the self. So this is again the difference from in Vedanta and Sankhya. Pradhana is a real thing. In Vedanta, Maya is not real. Maya is the apparent power of, is the inherent power of Brahman. Here it is completely different and it's a real substance. They fall into the snares woven by the intellect of other dualistic thoughts and lose their bearing. Similarly are the other sophists led astray by Sankhya. So other dualistic thoughts and the Sankhya, they both compete with each other, fight with each other, and the example given here is, thus by postulating theories opposed to each other like carnivores fighting for a piece of flesh, they continuously drift away from the supreme reality, owing to their proneness to discover such distorted interpretations of the conclusions arrived at by the valid means of proof as may demolish each other's point of view. So that is the conflict between the dualistic schools of thought, in which Sankhya also is one of them. And they both, and all of them, they keep fighting with each other, and they have gone far away from the experience of the reality. Now they are stuck in this argumentation, debates, proving who is right, who is wrong. One has gone far away, Shankaracharya says. Ataha tanmata mana adritya vedantartha tatvam ekatva darshanam prati adaravanto mumukshavaha syuhu iti tarkika mata dosha pradarshanam kinchid uchyate asmabhir natu tarkika vat tatparyena. So here he says, therefore we disclose a few flaws in the theory of the sophists, not in the spirit of the sophists, but in order that people desires of liberation may become devoted to the true import of Upanishad. So now this whole bhashya, why Shankaracharya is bringing up Sankhya and refuting? It is not like Sankhyans and other dualistic thoughts of schools of thought fighting with each other. It is not like that. He says, I am bringing this up so that those who are real seekers of liberation, they don't get caught up in these philosophies of Sankhya and other schools of thought and lose their time, because let them come to the real essence of the Upanishads, the Vedas, and let them study and they attain mukti. So to save them and to give them the right direction is what we are disclosing, the few flaws in the Sankhya philosophy. We are not interested in proving who is greater and who is lesser. And so he gives one quotation. Tatha etad atra uktam vividastveva nikshipya virodhodbhava karanam taisam rakshita sadbuddhihi sukham nirvati vedavit iti. So he says, leaving the cause of origination of all disputes amongst the disputants, meaning whatever is the cause, somebody says Purusha is karta and not bhokta. Somebody says Purusha is bhokta, not karta. All those, and somebody says Purusha Pradhana, both are eternally there. Like so many dualistic thoughts, schools of thoughts, they say that creation is eternal, Jiva is eternal, Ishvara also is eternal, Maya is also eternal. So many different schools of thoughts are there in dualism. They may continue to fight with each other. He says, leaving all those aside and keeping his good sense well protected by the example, the knower of the Vedas reposes happily. He says, I don't want to get into all this intellectual argumentation. I want to know what is the truth. And so this knower of the Vedas does not fall into these traps and keeps the mind focused on what is the essence, that this creation is an apparent reality. It is not true. Purusha alone is the absolute truth. That's the essence of Vedanta, and that's what the Mahavakyas, etc. will also tell us. So he says, that is the reason why I am taking this up. So now for today, I will stop here before we carry on, because further some more arguments are there. This one portion I will complete before the next objection comes up. Kimcha bhoktritva kartritvayoho vikriyayoho vishesha anupapattihi ka namasau kartritva anjatyantara bhuta bhoktritva vishishta vikriya yato bhokta eva purusha kalpyate na karta pradhanam tu kartreva na bhoktra iti. Na bhoktra iti. So he says, moreover, no distinction can be made between the two kinds of modification. Modification meaning apparent modification of enjoyership and doership. You cannot have one without the other. He says, what indeed is that modification characterized as enjoyership, which belongs to a class by itself and is different from agentship? Meaning, if karta, so whoever is the karta has to be the bhokta. Somebody being karta, somebody else being the bhokta is no use. Because the law of cause and effect itself goes for a toss. Karta will do the karma, that is the cause. Karma phala is the effect. And the enjoyment of that karma phala is to be done by the karta only. Otherwise, there is no responsibility of karma, no? Anyone can do anything and get away with it. Why? Because I am only the karta. I am not the bhokta. And first of all, why will somebody do some action if they are not the bhokta? What is the point of doing that action? So he says, you can't create this distinction. between enjoyership and agentship. What indeed is that modification characterized as enjoyership, which belongs to a class by itself and is different from agentship, depending on which the Purusha can be considered of as merely the enjoyer and not the agent, while the Pradhan can be thought of as merely an agent and not the enjoyer. So that is the objection created by Shankaracharya ji against the Sankhyans now. Let us see what Sankhyans answer that we will take up in our next class. Any questions for today? So June dates, I don't know if I've given, but we will have the class on 4th and 11th. We will have the class, and if required, then further also. All right. One question is here. Okay. Yes.
Hari Om Swamiji, Pranam. Swamiji, it may not be, I'm really just curious, it's not so relevant here. But in the Sankhyan philosophy, then if they are saying that the karta and the bhokta are separate, many Purushas and many Pradhans, Prakriti, how do they keep the connectivity between each pair? Like one karta is doing for that bhokta, so how do they maintain the alliance? What do they say is maintaining them as a consistent? How do they maintain the consistency between each Purusha and Prakriti? Each Pradhan, if you know what I mean?
So there is no problem in maintaining that consistency, because each Prakriti, each Purusha has its own equipment, each Purusha has their own Prakriti, the three gunas combination.
But over multiple lifetimes. I mean, because the whole point is they are saying they are also bonded.
Pradhan will do that.
So Pradhan has intelligence then, according to them.
That is what it is. Now, by itself it is inert, but in the Sannidhi or the presence of Purusha, Pradhana becomes sentient and then it does everything. In Vedanta, we say Ishvara does everything. Ishvara is the karma phala data. Yeah. Here it is Pradhan which is doing it. There is no Ishvara in Sankhya.
Right. It's just, okay, thank you so much.
So Pradhan only will take care. What people talk today, most of the people repeat as parrots is this only. I don't believe in God, I believe in nature. What do they mean by that? If you believe that nature is a sentient entity which governs the laws, then that you are replacing that with Ishvara only. Just the terminology is different.
Right, exactly.
But of course, the understanding of Ishvara in Vedanta and understanding of Ishvara that people have or the Sankhyas have, I mean, Sankhya doesn't have Ishvara, but their understanding of Pradhan as doing everything is different, very, very different.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hari Om Swamiji, so I wanted to understand what is the end goal of Sankhyans. Like in Vedanta, there's an end goal that I need to go beyond the duality, or even if I'm saying from the Dvaita standpoint, I need to become one with God. There is an end game here, but here Purusha is going to be there, Prakriti is always going to be there. So what is the end game for a Sankhyan?
The end game for Sankhyan is only that every individual combination of Purusha Prakriti, they will get liberated. That's all.
But
so
what is
n number of Purushas which are there. So one Purusha will realize that I am infinite consciousness, I am eternal consciousness, and that's where the flaw is in their thinking. So if they realize I am eternal consciousness, then everything should actually disappear as far as Vedanta and the understanding of infinite consciousness is concerned. But they maintain that self is immutable, unchangeable. At the same time, they maintain that the self is the enjoyer also. And then they also maintain that this freedom from this identification with this equipment is what the Purusha is the ultimate moksha. It is the realization that I am Purusha, I am not bound by Pradhan, and that Jiva has got liberated. But there are other Purushas which are continuing. So the liberation concept is only that. And for them, there is no creation as a real creation also. In the sense that, so creation is not like a production. That's what I meant. For them, creation is not like a production. It is only from unmanifest to manifest, manifest to unmanifest. That's why they say creation is eternal, Prakriti is eternal, Pradhana is eternal. And Purushas are also eternal. So Purusha there is the Jivatmas. From Vedanta standpoint, what we call as Jivatma is what they call as Purusha. That's why they're saying Purushas are many. And that Jivatma dropping its identification with one equipment to realize that I am that Purusha, I am not this equipment identified with Pradhan. That is their liberation. So that's their end goal. What happens to us is when we study Vedanta, so many of these other philosophies, we will keep finding some flaw in that, and we wonder how can they accept this? Because they have their own strong logic and they are conditioned to think that this is real. And the big difference in Vedanta and every other school of thought is this is not real. Now that is not acceptable to many. That this entire thing is an illusion and it is not even created. Ajatavada is the highest in Vedanta. Now that standpoint they cannot accept. So keeping the creation as real, whatever inside that one can do is what one will do, and that is what is the understanding of liberation also for each of them. The entire creation only disappearing and you are infinite consciousness alone and there is nothing else apart from this Brahman. That standpoint is not, other schools of thought will not accept that at all. And that's one of the reasons why we have to appreciate that how did Shankaracharya ji ensure that people get convinced by this philosophy, and he brought back the, he revived the Advaitic philosophy, defeating all the different schools of thought and made the people also understand. That's why he has not done a very small, his work is massive. What he did is not a small feat.
Right.
Thank you, Swamiji. So, the doubt was just how come then in chapter 13 of Gita, Sankhyan philosophy or Sankhyan interpretation has been brought in?
Because the question there is about, so the Arjuna has three questions. What is Jnanam, Gneyam? What is Kshetra, Kshetrajna? And Purusha and Prakriti. So when Purusha and Prakriti are being asked about, then Bhagavan is using Sankhya to explain to Arjun that this is the Sankhya philosophy, this is what Purusha and Prakriti is all about. But in Vedanta, we say Purusha is beyond karta and beyond bhokta. So he also uses Sankhya there. And then because he has explained already the Kshetra and Kshetrajna, it becomes clear that the Purusha of Sankhya and the Kshetrajna of the Vedanta, there is a difference in that.
There's a difference, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Swamiji.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Harihi Om.